This is the third edited upload of the video you are about to watch, and in total the fourth video of mine on this subject. The reason there are 4 videos instead of just one is DJ Audits himself, who has had the previous videos blocked from the UK. 2 videos were blocked on the grounds of privacy. Yes, DJ Audits is touchy about his own privacy. No sniggering at the back, please. And the third block was due to a defamation complaint he raised. The very idea of DJ Audits submitting a privacy complaint is utterly laughable in its hypocrisy, and it's especially laughable here because I made strenuous efforts to protect his privacy and continue to do so, and he knows that. His privacy complaints were utterly bogus, and as far as I'm concerned, this was an act of censorship, as there was no merit whatsoever in the privacy complaint. In fairness to YouTube, they can't carefully examine every complaint due to the sheer size of the platform they run, and so they have to take such complaints on trust. The same applies to DJ Audits' defamation complaints, which is also laughable. I can tell you that I have yet to receive any defamation claim or solicitor's letter on behalf of DJ Audits, and I will be surprised if I do, because he knows that I have not libelled him in any way, shape or form, and as far as I'm concerned, what he is doing is abusing the trust of YouTube, and his behaviour can only contribute to weakening the platform. Let me tell DJ Audits and his supporters this: if you block this video, I will just upload another one. I won't stop. The best way for DJ Audits to deal with this is to take it on the chin and move on, because it will blow over. My channel, as matters stand, has less than 2,000 subscribers. I'm not a major social media influencer, and DJ Audits and his supporters' reaction to my videos and my channel has been way over the top and can only do him harm in the long run. Unfortunately, what I have had to do again is make further edits to this video of mine you are about to see. This should not be taken to mean that I accept in any way that my content about DJ Audits is defamatory. It is not defamatory, but I want to make it as hard as possible for DJ Audits to have YouTube block the video. That does mean I've had to chop this up, which means the audio and visual quality is not going to be very good. Not that it's much good most of the time anyway, as video editing is clearly not my forte. It's probably no surprise for you to hear that I'm a film photographer. I'm not comfortable with the digital medium, and I'm not used to video editing and whatnot. Now let me set out my stall. Here I will have to change my wording slightly in view of the defamation complaint brought by DJ Audits. A bogus complaint, but nevertheless I must take it into account. DJ Audits has admitted he was filming for his viewers while driving and not paying full attention to the road because he was chasing a fire engine. It is not libellous to say this, it is actually common ground because he admits it himself. In view of this, after watching the footage of a driving incident, you may, like me, wonder how it can be that the child cyclist was blamed and DJ Audits was not prosecuted for some driving offence. The possibility is there that he lied to or misled Leicestershire police. For instance, he may not have told them of the existence of a phone dash cam, or he may have revealed it to them but cut out the sound from the footage he handed over. Or he may have handed over edited footage that did not show the fire engine. Or it may be he did something else along these lines. Or it could be that he told the absolute truth and the police just decided to take no action. You must make up your own minds or not. You may decide to believe DJ Audits, or you may decide that there is insufficient information to say one way or the other, or you may disbelieve him. I'm clear in my own mind that he should have been prosecuted for dangerous driving and convicted and punished, and if he did tell the truth to the police and still wasn't prosecuted, these videos are my personal protest at the ineptitude of Leicestershire police. The fact it's a child, by the way, is relevant because a child is a vulnerable road user. All cyclists are vulnerable road users, but children especially are vulnerable for the reasons I outline in the video. It's always the case that with this sort of incident that people will come up with new observations, especially things that are obvious but I just didn't notice when watching it myself. That's just a way of things. After the first video was uploaded, I decided I would make a follow-up video with some new points once people had been given the chance to comment. One user, whose name you'll now see on the screen, spotted that DJ Audits began moving before the light changed to green. While it's not certain, it does look like he moved over the white stop line before the lights turned to green, which is contrary to Rule 176 of the Highway Code and is an offence under Section 36 of the Road Traffic Act. In any event, it's an important observation and reinforces that the driving shown in this video is terrible. There were 2 or 3 other things I noticed as I was watching the footage but didn't mention in the original video, and I see others have noticed these and mentioned them to me, and I've mentioned them in comments. Let me just mention them here as well. First, the large vehicle disappearing away up New Parks Way, which I think could be the fire engine. Second, the first kid on the bike who crosses the junction at the start of the footage, heading for Aikman Avenue. Looks like he or she was being followed by the unfortunate kid who got run over. Both of them seem to emerge from the road, that's Battersby Road, rather than the pavement. I think I also hear DJ Audits say sod when he stops. It's to his credit, to be fair, that he does stop. We do need to be fair to him and acknowledge that. But at the same time, his attitude and his driving are just appalling. Let me repeat, the important point is that there is no such thing as a perfect driver. This sort of thing can happen to pretty much anybody, but when it happens to an otherwise competent driver, it's because of a momentary distraction or lapse of concentration. That's careless driving. In this case, the distraction was created entirely by DJ Audits himself and was prolonged and meant he completely ignored everything else on the road. That's dangerous driving. That cyclist could have been anything, a large lorry even. Finally, just in case anybody still questions the authenticity of the footage, I've taken 2 further steps. First, here is a screen cap of DJ Audits' exchange with someone on his own community page in which he refers to this same footage. You'll find that screen cap in this video as well. I also have in my possession a copy of a detailed email that DJ Audits sent to another YouTuber in which he discusses this footage and explained his actions. The footage is genuine. Second, in the description below you will find a Dropbox link to my original video in uncensored form, so that's in the video description below. I hope this is the last video I ever have to make about this footage. The footage I'm about to show you is from DJ Audits. It shows him running over a child at a junction in Leicester. The video was taken from one of his live streams or recordings. I'm not sure which. He claims it was just a recording. I've blurred out the child's face for privacy. I just want to emphasise, I think this is the most important thing of all, I'm told that the child was unhurt, so we can all rest easy on that point. That was the thing that worried me the most when I saw this. I'm not going to reveal my source for this footage. The footage is genuine. The incident took place about 2 years ago. I know exactly where the incident took place. I know why DJ Audits was there. It is DJ Audits in the footage driving. Whether DJ Audits told the truth to the police about what occurred is unclear. Now that I've given you that preamble, I will show you the clip, then I will offer my own legal analysis on what happened and what, if any, offences DJ Audits may have committed. Obviously, the cyclist moved onto the junction after DJ Audits entered the junction, so on the face of it, it looks like it's totally the cyclist's fault, and you can see why the police would come to that conclusion. But that was a wrong conclusion, and I'm going to tell you why. If we look at the clip again, we can clearly see the child emerging to the left of DJ Audits. DJ Audits should have seen the child and could have stopped, or at least attempted to stop. He didn't, because he was distracted using his phone for audio and video, and he was distracted by something he was following. I know the specific thing he was following, and we will come on to that in a few moments. I think the key point here is that the child was within the driver's range of visibility. This was broad daylight, good weather conditions, a dry road, and that junction is flat. There was no impediment to a reasonable driver spotting the cyclist moving onto the junction and slowing down and stopping quickly to avoid a collision. DJ Audits was distracted by something nearby. That something drew his attention away from the road, and it also caused him to enter the junction faster than he otherwise might have done. The thing that distracted him was a fire engine emerging from a nearby fire station, which he decided to follow. Let me show you the junction on Google Street View so that you can see what I mean. Here's a Google map of the junction. This is a suburb on the west side of Leicester. It's a dual carriageway called New Parks Way, and the incident you've just watched took place at the junction that I've highlighted there, which is the junction with Battersby Road and Aikman Avenue. You can see the fire station immediately to the east of the junction, and again I've marked that with an arrow. DJ Audits had approached the junction from the south, and here's a view of the southern approach. What you'll see straight away is that there are street lamps and a pavement and some double yellow lines, and traffic approaches a pedestrian crossing situated at the junction itself. What all that tells me is that this part of New Parks Way very probably has a speed limit of 30 miles per hour. And here we are at the junction. I've added some arrows to indicate key things. The green arrow indicates roughly the position of DJ Audits when he stopped at the junction. The yellow arrow is the point where the cyclist emerged into the junction. The red arrow again just shows you the fire station that DJ Audits was looking at. It's a western fire station that mainly serves the western suburbs of Leicester. But DJ Audits wasn't just looking at the fire station. He was in fact watching a fire engine emerge from the fire station, and he intended to follow it, which is why he emerged so quickly out of the junction and is the reason why he was distracted. Here's what he told one of his followers on the community page of his channel. I'm also aware that he gave a similar story by email to another channel owner, so there can be no denying what in truth took place. We can see that his attention would have been on his right side, whereas the cyclist emerged from the left side. I'll just show the clip again just for emphasis. The interesting thing about all this is that if we follow this road up a bit further past the fire station, we can see that there is no way out for a fire engine along New Parks Way. There is a boulevard that you can probably surmise there on the right between the houses and the trees, but that's a bit too narrow for a fire engine, and I doubt that it's generally used. So we have to go back and look down Aikman Avenue, and we eventually see that the fire engine had to emerge from Aikman Avenue. That's pretty obvious. We know that DJ Audits was driving straight on. He wasn't turning right down Aikman Avenue. He was continuing along New Parks Way. Logically, that means if DJ Audits was following a fire engine, which he was, the fire engine must have gone up New Parks Way, yet we can't see the fire engine in the video. I know for a fact he was following a fire engine, so what this tells me is that he may have been distracted by the fire station, and a fire engine to his right initially, that may have distracted him as well as he pulled up at the junction, but he wasn't distractedly looking to his right at the point he emerged. He was instead focused ahead of him and intended to catch a fire engine that had already taken off on an emergency call along New Parks Way. This may seem like I'm labouring the obvious, but it is significant to the incident because it explains further why in the clip of the incident he seems to emerge from the junction very quickly and seems not to notice the cyclist emerging from his left. The question all this raises is why didn't the police ascribe blame to DJ Audits for the incident and charge him with a traffic offence? The fact that the child, fortunately, thank God, was unhurt would not be a legal defence for DJ Audits. Before we get to that, let's look at the relevant road traffic law, but let's start with the Highway Code. Just by way of preamble, some parts of the Highway Code reflect the law and are mandatory, other parts are guidance and not mandatory as such. But even the stuff in the Highway Code that is not mandatory is still important to the law because it reflects what is expected of a competent driver. Rule 204 of the Highway Code states as follows: the road users most at risk from road traffic are pedestrians, in particular children, of older adults and disabled people, cyclists, horse riders and motorcyclists. It is particularly important to be aware of children, older adults and disabled people, and learner and inexperienced drivers and riders. In any interaction between road users, those who can cause the greatest harm have the greatest responsibility to reduce the danger or threat they pose to others. Now that's obviously more a statement of principle than anything else, but it reinforces the expectation on drivers. The point is that driving a vehicle is inherently risky. It puts other people at risk, and pedestrians are the most vulnerable of all road users. Even if the driver has right of way, he still needs to have awareness and anticipation, especially in places where a vulnerable road user, such as a pedestrian or cyclist, may appear. The overriding point in law is that drivers have a duty of care to others on the road and should always remain vigilant in situations where the risk of a collision or obstruction is high, for example when passing parked buses or ice cream vans, to give a general point. As a rule of thumb, if a driver could or should have anticipated that a pedestrian may step onto the road, let's say, they must drive with appropriate caution, i.e. slow down. Should DJ Audits have anticipated a child cyclist riding right across the junction, or any cyclist? Yes, because whenever a driver is at a junction that could be used by pedestrians or cyclists, he should not ignore the possibility of an encroachment by a pedestrian or cyclist. It's not as if he was driving along the motorway and the cyclist suddenly appeared out of nowhere. He was in a suburban area in a part of a road with a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit and a pedestrian crossing where cyclists and pedestrians would be expected to cross, and where he, as an experienced motorist, should know that such things can happen. Something of broader interest but worth taking into account is research by Professor John Wann at the Department of Psychology, Royal Holloway, University of London. Professor Wann discovered that children cannot accurately see or judge vehicle speeds above 25 miles per hour. I've included a link to this study in the video description. The study suggests that some 6 to 11-year-olds may not actually be able to tell if a vehicle is approaching at all, even if the children are paying close attention to the road. The same principle applies to those aged over 75, as out of interest. Without getting too scientific, but for anyone interested, the speed deception is based on what's called a looming rate, which in very simple terms is an effect upon someone's perception of speed and motion. The inability of children to accurately detect vehicle speed helps to explain why areas outside schools are often already subject to 20-mile-per-hour speed restrictions, even if only during school commuting hours. The reduced speed makes it easier for children to detect a vehicle's speed of approach and also gives a driver more time to react if a child gets their crossing decision wrong. If an impact is unavoidable, the risk of fatal injuries being sustained is reduced by the lower speed of the vehicle. Professor Wann himself puts it this way: "This is not a matter of children not paying attention, but a problem related to low-level visual detection mechanisms. So even when children are paying very close attention, they may fail to detect a fast-approaching vehicle." Professor Wann also says, "These findings provide strong evidence that children may make risky crossing judgments when vehicles are travelling at 30 or 40 miles per hour. In addition, they are more likely to step in front of the faster vehicles, which therefore increases the risk fatality." Now, what I notice about the clip of DJ Audits driving is that he is distracted. He's, as we've mentioned, he's talking to his live stream audience or recording or whatever it is, and he enters the junction at quite a speed. Well, sorry, he enters the junction at quite a speed. He obviously doesn't think about what he's doing. He just assumes that the junction is clear and he can just go ahead safely without checking, and he was wrong. Hitting the cyclist wasn't a black swan moment. This was something within the realm of expectation, because pedestrians and cyclists do emerge at junctions where there are pavements and walkways, and as Professor Wann explains, children are especially vulnerable in these situations. If DJ Audits hadn't been distracted by the collision, if DJ Audits hadn't been distracted but the collision had happened anyway, then I think we could have called it an accident, and it would be a civil matter rather than criminal, with liability shared between him and the cyclist, perhaps with most of the liability on him simply because he's the driver. In that hypothetical situation, his liability would be more on the basis that, although the cyclist's actions would have surprised him, he still should have anticipated such a thing, and even if for some reason it was shown that he could not have anticipated it, he should have been able to stop, and by colliding with the cyclist, his driving fell below the standard of a reasonable and competent motorist. But here he was distracted, and given he was distracted, we can't just put it down to an accident. There is the potential for criminal liability. The collision itself does not form part of the criminal liability, we can only look at his driving. But the collision is further evidence of either dangerous driving or careless driving, the latter also known as driving without due care and attention. Which of the two was it? Section 2 of the Road Traffic Act 1988 makes dangerous driving an offence, and Section 2A defines dangerous driving as driving in a way that falls far below what would be expected of a competent and careful driver, and that would be obvious to a competent and careful driver that driving in that way would be dangerous. The word obvious implies deliberateness, maybe intent in some circumstances. In contrast, careless driving is defined in Section 3 of the 1988 Act as driving without due care and attention, or without reasonable consideration for other persons using the road or place. You can see that this is merely a bad driving offence. There is no requirement here that the driver should have acted deliberately for the offence to be formed. Therefore, the difference between the two offences is that dangerous driving involves a deliberate decision to drive in a way that presents an obvious risk, whereas careless driving is just driving that falls below the standard of a careful and competent driver, but is not necessarily deliberate on the part of the driver. If we're going to be strict about this, deliberate is not the same as intentional. The significance of this distinction being that a person can be convicted of dangerous driving even without proof of intent. Though this is only a general observation, and in practice it will turn on the facts of the case as to whether the court will expect to see some proof of intent. Both careless and dangerous driving can also include a different element, which is misjudgment. In the case of dangerous driving, the misjudgment must be of a most serious degree, but I think all that part of it is an aside, because I don't think that applied here. There was no misjudgment on the part of DJ Audits as far as I can see. It was more that he was distracted. I mentioned just now that the fact there was a collision is not itself proof of either careless driving or dangerous driving. It's merely a fact that evidences it or brings the standard of driving to our attention. In other words, this is not to be assessed by the consequences which followed, but by the nature of the error in all the circumstances in which it occurred. This means, just to repeat, because this bears emphasis, the fact that, thankfully, the child was uninjured does not affect the judgment of whether it was dangerous driving or careless driving. There are 2 points that suggest this should be considered the less serious offence of careless driving. First, and just to be clear, vlogging while driving is not in itself illegal, and we can't say whether DJ Audits is holding a device while he's driving, so we'll give him the benefit of the doubt and say he was live streaming or recording hands-free. Second, the child on the bicycle made the mistake of crossing in front of moving traffic. Although we're not supposed to take this into account as a factor because it's DJ Audits' own driving that counts, not the consequence of his driving, I think realistically it's inevitable that the child's own culpability must weigh into it. However, my view is that this incident was the more serious offence of dangerous driving. There are three main reasons I think it's dangerous driving. First, let me repeat. The involvement of the child is irrelevant because we're only looking at his driving. The child was unhurt, but it can still be dangerous driving. Second, the distraction was prolonged rather than momentary. Third, the distraction was of a serious nature in which DJ Audits' attention was not fully on the road ahead. Or rather, it was focused narrowly on the road ahead and not to his left. Fourth, maybe this is the most important point. We can see that what DJ Audits did was deliberate. Remember I said a few moments ago that the distinction is between deliberate bad driving, which is dangerous driving, and non-deliberate bad driving, which is careless driving. Obviously this is an artificial dichotomy and a bit misleading because you've also got to control for the seriousness of the act or omission, and there will be cases that fall into a grey area. But the dichotomy is still useful even if simplistic because it helps to clarify our thinking. And what DJ Audits did was deliberate and brings this clearly under the heading of dangerous driving. Please understand that no one is suggesting that DJ Audits intentionally ran over some child, but what we are suggesting is that he deliberately drove in a way that put himself and other road users at risk. It's not a situation where he was distracted by a passenger in the car who was talking to him, or he took an urgent business or personal call on his hands-free mobile. That's careless driving, and to be honest, it's the sort of thing that can happen to any of us. What he did was deliberate. He used his car as a prop for his social media activities and deliberately set up a live stream or recording for the purpose of auditing using his car, and as part of that live stream or recording he was distracted by something, and we know what he was distracted by. It is dangerous driving, it's not a grey area, it's clear that it was dangerous driving. I'll now turn to what DJ Audits may or may not have told the police. There is a basic common law right against self-incrimination. In other words, he doesn't have to admit to the police that he has committed an offence or do or say anything that would amount to an admission of criminal wrongdoing. There is a statutory duty to report the accident where someone suffers injury or there is damage to the vehicle, and failure to do so is an offence under Section 170 of the Road Traffic Act 1988. But that does not affect the right against self-incrimination I've just explained. In other words, he has to report the accident, but he doesn't have to incriminate himself in the process. The only duty he has is to give the police the information required under Section 170. This was definitely a reportable accident as there was damage to the vehicle, and it seems highly likely the child suffered some form of injury, if only minor. The only information required under Section 170 is to simply report that the accident has taken place, and the police will normally ask for licence and insurance details. The point I'm getting at is that he only has to stop and report the accident. He otherwise has a right to remain silent. However, if he does waive his right to remain silent and volunteers information over and above that required in Section 170, and in the process lies or does anything to mislead the police or conceal information from the police about a traffic accident in circumstances where a criminal investigation seems likely, then potentially he is committing the offence of perverting the course of justice. That's a common law offence. One possible scenario for how this played out is that DJ Audits gave the police the minimum information required under Section 170, and the police just assumed it was a mundane accident involving a child coming out in front of moving traffic and didn't inquire further. There was no obligation on DJ Audits to volunteer information, let me emphasise, or tell them he had a recording of the incident, so it may have been left there. That's plausible. Yet if we go back to DJ Audits' explanation of all this to one of his followers, he does say that he did give the footage to the police. And it could also be that the police simply did not conduct any meaningful inquiries and just accepted the bare information necessary about the accident and required under Section 170. Should DJ Audits have been prosecuted for anything that arises from the clip we have seen and from what we can infer of the surrounding facts? If this had been a situation where DJ Audits was not distracted and the child just came out into the middle of a road in front of him, I would not want to see him prosecuted, as it would not be an accident that's really his fault. But this is a situation where DJ Audits was distracted. His attention was not on or not fully on the road, and the distraction was not just a live stream or recording he was making into his phone, it was also the fire engine he was following. He had set up the phone for this purpose, which means the distraction was deliberately created by DJ Audits himself. I think he should have been prosecuted for dangerous driving. Whether he would have been convicted is unclear, because the court may have taken a sympathetic view towards him due to the actions of the child on the bicycle. Could DJ Audits still be prosecuted today for dangerous driving? The answer to this is absolutely yes. We can see from Schedule 2 of the Road Traffic Offenders Act 1988 that dangerous driving is an either-way offence, which means it can be tried in either the Magistrates' Court or the Crown Court. Section 1272 of the Magistrates' Courts Act 1980, Section 5 and Schedule 1 of the Interpretation Act 1978, and Section 64(1) of the Criminal Law Act 1977, when these provisions are read together, tell us that an either-way offence such as this has no time limit within which a prosecution can be brought. Cases of dangerous driving without any aggravating factors. This is sort of a more the middling case. It's possible it could be tried in the Magistrates' Court as a less serious matter, but there are elements of it that are aggravated. There's the simple fact that there was a collision, which will obviously influence things emotionally. The Crown Court would hear the more serious cases, and this is known as a case tried on indictment. My view is that this case is indictable because DJ Audits was distracted for an extended length of time and there was a collision. His behaviour suggests that he could be a danger to other road users.